Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Crustle. Now, Crustle is a Pokemon that has good tanky stats. However, it feels slightly underwhelming. I would imagine that a Pokemon carrying such a large chunk of Earth on its back would maybe be just a bit tankier. Anyway, it does have 70 on the base hit points and 75 on the base special defense, so unless we fully invest in that, it's not going to be too tanky there. But then there's 125 on that defense, so that means we can become a pretty decent physical tank with that 125 on defense and still put out a bit of damage with that 95 attack, so not bad overall. 65 on special attack, we're not going to be using that, and 45 on the speed. We should just anticipate to get outsped by everything, and then we will be good to go. Look at its typing, it's a rock bug typing, so it shares this typing with Shuckle, and it's a really neat typing when we look at it, that a lot of the resistances from both sides cancel out and make it to where we only have 3 weaknesses. Now, 3 weaknesses, not the best, but it's actually pretty solid compared to what we were dealing with as a rock bug type. Now, we don't get a lot of resistances either, but then there's things like fire, fighting, flying, ground. These would normally be weaknesses, but they are canceled out because they are the resistances of the other typing, so it's still a pretty durable typing, all things considered. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we're going to see that Crustle gets Shell Smash. Shell Smash, one of the most powerful moves in Pokemon. It's effectively the Make Me a Sweeper move, that it drops your defenses, but then it raises your attack, special attack, and speed by 2, so it makes you the ultimate glass cannon just from using that. Now there is incredible synergy right here because Shell Smash and the Sturdy ability. So Sturdy is like having a free focus dash. If we're at full hit points, we can't drop below 1 hit points, which means that Shell Smash is going to go off pretty much no matter what. Then we attempt to outspeed the opponent after that, and we also get to carry a free item. Most time with Shell Smash, well, you have to use Focus Sash to make it about as effective as it can be. With this, we get to carry the Lumberry, so if they try to burn us, they try to status us, not going to work. That Lumberry is going to cure us up, and then we still go for incredible amounts of damage. Our offensive moves are going to be Stone Edge, X Scissor, that's just going to give us our stab, and then we have Knockoff. Now, we could go with Knockoff, and we also do get access to Earthquake. So whichever one you're more comfortable with, I like the idea of Knockoff, that, you know, we just knock off once into a different move. That's high KO potential right there. It also does give us good coverage against Ghost-type Pokemon, but with X-Scissor, we're already going to be hitting Psychic-type and Dark-type really well, so if you use Earthquake, you're not going to double down on the super effective hits as much, and it is higher base power, but it is less utility. So if Stone Edge, X-Scissor, or Earthquake doesn't score the KO, at least Knockoff has the option to do a massive amount of damage and remove the item before you go down, which is just a little bit of extra. It's kind of it's insurance. It's anticipating that you're going to go down at some point, so it's making the most of that worst case scenario. And that's kind of something to consider with Crustle. As for the stats are interesting with Crustle. You have your 2v2, 2v2, your 4 points. They just kind of go wherever, and then the Jolly Nature. Here's the thing about Crustle, with that 45 speed, even doubling the speed after a Shell Smash isn't going to make you that fast. You're going to need the Jolly Nature to outspeed 135 base speed Pokemon. If you go with the Adamant Nature, you only have 189 speed. Now that will allow you to outspeed Greninja when you're doubling, if that's the only speed tier you're concerned with. Then we max out the attack. 317 doubling is going to be a good amount of damage, but it's not going to be enough damage in some situations. Stone Edge isn't going to one-hit KO Kangaskhan, so that's the kind of damage that we're dealing with, but pretty much any Pokemon that is more frail than Kangaskhan will be neutrally one-shot by Stone Edge. Then we still carry our super effective hits to get the most out of it, and that's going to be your basic Sturdy Shuckle. Now we can add some different depth to this, that Weak Armor Focus Sash. So we give up our Lumberry, we just change it around to where we're going to be Focus Sash instead of Sturdy, but Weak Armor. Weak Armor, if a physical attack hits this Pokemon, defense is lowered by 1 and speed is raised by 1. Pretty much we're just going to use this, that way we get as many outspeeds as possible, and it lets us run that Adamant Nature. So we get to play a bit more comfort, because now we're going to outspeed Pokemon well beyond that 135, and other Scarf Pokemon that are more or less sweepers, and then we can also just kind of cut our losses. We Shell Smash, we lose defense, Weak Armor hits, we lose defense, but that doesn't really matter because now we're going to have more speed and more attack, but we do give up Lumberry, so you can run that if you want to like this. Now other item options are the Lychee Berry. Lychee Berry, when we're below 1/4 max hit points, remember Sturdy is our Focus Sash already, so we get to Lychee Berry on top of that, which means we're going to go +3. Now we're actually finding neutral KOs that we wouldn't have, but we are giving up the comfort of not having to worry about status. So there is that game you have to play there, but again, we're going to be trying to not be tanky in any way, so we're expecting the one-shot, Sturdy activating after the Shell Smash, and then we have Lychee Berry giving us the +3, and now that's going to give us serious damage. Now that's going to threaten Pokemon that it didn't, and as long as you're finding an outspeed, it's going to be devastating. And then we can also run Jolly Nature if we're doing Lychee Berry. That way we get speed, we can outspeed as many Pokemon as possible. You know, there's a Mega Manectric or something. We outspeed it and we blow it up with an Earthquake. That's going to be the GG right there, and then Crustle can get some serious damage done with the Lychee Berry. Then we have Setup Crustle. So Setup Crustle, cuss that berry, kind of an option. It's like worst case scenario. That Sturdy ability makes it to where you're going to get your Stealth Rocks off pretty much no matter what. We still are investing into our hit points because if we're going up against a weaker Pokemon, lets us set up Stealth Rocks, lets us set up like layers of spikes and stuff, used as a pretty solid lead in this situation. Then we get access to Knockoff, and we can go for the Stone Edge. Stone Edge is if we are going for as much damage as possible, because the cool thing is that, say we Stealth Rocks, they Stealth Rocks us, we use Spikes, they hit us with a super effective move that would one-hit KO us. Sturdy activates, Cuss That Berry activates, so we can either go for the second layer of Spikes, the Knockoff if it's a super effective hit, or we just want to remove their utility, or Stone Edge if it's a monstrous amount of damage, or a potential KO. This is why we run the Cuss That Berry, just to give us that extra turn, even though we are so slow. Now we can just go for full tank on this Crustle as well. Then we go with the Impish Nature, that way we get some defenses, and maybe a little bit of special defense investment, that way we don't get blown up by directly anything that's a special attack, but then we won't need to worry about Stone Edge as much, and we have Toxic. So the options here are set up Stealth Rocks, use Knockoff, Toxic, and then see what happens. Cuss That Berry is still an option here, but it's a lot riskier. Are you going to be a 3-hit KO Pokemon that's going to end up in the red? And if you do, then that means free speed and free turn that you wouldn't have gotten. If not, you try to go for the Citrus Berry. I don't think you're going to be on the field for 5 turns when trying to set up like this. If you do, bravo, that's awesome. But if not, you know, Citrus Berry is going to give you more health than leftovers. So the idea is you set up Stealth Rocks, take a hit. You set up Spikes, take a hit. Citrus Berry activates. That's when you use Knockoff, and then you can try to play it from there. It's more of a sweeping Pokemon. Knockoff, it's more of a tanky Pokemon. Toxic, make them really get set back for trying to set up. They set up a Calm Mind, boom, go for that Toxic. As long as they're not like a Clefable or a Suicune that can either rest it off, or if they're not affected by it because of Wonder Guard, something like that. But other than that, they're going to feel it from that Toxic, which could set them back. And then if they switch out because of Toxic or Knockoff, Stealth Rocks and Spikes start doing damage, so your setup game is going to be pretty ferocious on Crustle. And a last bit of word for Crustle, it does get access to Curse. So you can curse, you have access to Rest Talk as well. So just your generic Rest Sleep Talk, and then what you want to do is you want to max out the hit points and then put max special defense investment. Since we are using Curse, we can also go with a special defense nature. In this situation, we are going to want the Careful Nature, since we're boosting our attack and we don't want Calm. And that's kind of going to be it for Crustle. We use Curse, we hope for the best. The great thing is, we have Shell Armor, so we can't be struck by a critical hit, which means if we set up 3 Curse, we know we're going to have that tankiness. Pretty much the biggest problem with setup is that if you get critical hit while setting up Calm Mind, while setting up Iron Defense, while setting up anything, a critical hit is what ruins your day more than anything. So Shell Armor is going to keep you safe from that, which makes it really good. Now the problem here is what move do we put as our last move? If we put Rock Slide, that's 16 PP max. Now, is that going to be enough to get a substantial amount of damage down on your opponent's team is the question. Now if you start setting up Curse, you know, you're at +3, you Sleep Talk, you use a Rock Slide, you need to make sure you're KOing your opponent in 3 or so hits when at max. Now we only have 95 attack and we're not investing into it, so the stab isn't going to be insane, which is also why we can't use Stone Edge. Stone Edge not only does it have 80 accuracy, but it only has 8 PP max. So that means we're not doing a lot of damage with Stone Edge at all. So that's where we're starting to get into a pretty heavy move gate right here, that we're going to be stopped by our PP, and if we don't do anything with it, then that's kind of unfortunate. So Stone Edge is going to be kind of out of the question, even though it is our best damage option. Now X-Scissor probably going to be the better option though. Higher damage, going to have a higher stab potential, also has 24 PP, so that's something to consider. No additional effect, and you also don't consider Bug as something that's going to be long lasting. It feels like you're going to get resisted by a lot, but if you don't, X-Scissor is going to be the high damage. X-Scissor is going to be 120 power after the stab boosting, so you're doing the same damage on a resisted hit as a neutral knockoff without item. So that's probably going to be your options to consider right there. As for items, leftovers on Crustle, going to be solid in this situation. Chesto Berry maybe, that way you get that first early rest and then you play it out from there. And then that's kind of it. So if you guys enjoyed the video, that's how you use Crustle. And I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.